The torches burned low inside the temple's grand hall. Shadows danced across the marble floor, whispering stories of a time now fading into legend. Outside, rain gently touched the cobblestones of Paris. The year was 1307, the night that would end the age of the Templars, had begun. Brother Matthew, a knight of the temple, stood before the altar. His armor dim beneath the flicker of dying candles. He could hear the bells in the distance, each one tolling like a heartbeat. Each one bringing him closer to the dawn of betrayal. "Forgive us, O Lord," he whispered. "For even faith cannot save us from the hands of kings." At that very hour, in the palace of King Philip IV, orders were being written, sealed with blood-red wax, to arrest every Templar knight in France. Greed had finally conquered faith. The Templars had grown too powerful, too rich. They held lands, castles, and treasures that kings themselves envied. And with that envy came fear of what the Templars truly knew. By dawn, the temple gates were broken. Men in black hoods stormed through the corridors, swords glinting in the rainlight. Brother Matthew and his brothers fought not for life, but for honor. Steel clashed, prayers echoed. And then, silence, when the sun rose over Paris. The banners of the Templars were torn down. Hundreds were taken. Tortured, questioned, erased from the records of time. But not all. A handful of knights escaped. They rode through the forest at night, their white mantles stained with mud and blood. Behind them the flames of the temple rose high into the gray sky. Among them was a young knight named Elias. He was silent, calm, but his eyes held the reflection of something darker than grief. Something that would give birth to vengeance. They traveled north, through mist and rain, toward the abandoned monastery of Montverdun. There, in a hidden crypt beneath the earth, they swore an oath. "Where the light has fallen, we shall rise from the dark. We are no longer the Templars. We are the Black Knights." The torches went out, and with them a new legend was born in silence, and so, the world forgot them. Kings ruled, empires fell. But deep beneath the stone and earth, the Black Knights waited. Their blades asleep, their faith unbroken. Until one night, centuries later, a shadow returned to claim what was once theirs. Clip 2. The rain had not stopped for days. It fell softly over the ruins of the old monastery, washing the blood from the stones. Deep beneath those ruins, in a chamber hidden from the eyes of kings, the surviving Templars gathered in silence. The air was cold. Only the faint glow of torches lit their faces hollowed by exhaustion, fear, and loss. Elias stood at the center, his hands resting on the hilt of his sword. The steel was dull, but the fire in his eyes was not. "Brothers," he said quietly, "the temple has fallen, but our faith cannot. The world has cast us into darkness, so we will become the darkness." No one spoke. They watched him as the storm above groaned like a dying beast. Outside, thunder rolled across the hills, echoing through the crypt like the voice of God. Elias raised his sword. "This blade no longer belongs to the Templars," he said. "It belongs to the forgotten, to those who have no name. We are no longer knights of the temple. We are knights of the shadow. We are the Black Order." The men knelt, one by one. They placed their hands upon the cold stone floor, and swore their oath in whispers. Each vow carried through the chamber like smoke. Each promise bound them tighter than chains. When the last word faded, Elias extinguished the torches. The chamber fell into darkness. Only the sound of rain remained, steady, endless, like a heartbeat. Days turned into weeks. The Black Order hid within the mountains, moving like ghosts. By night, they traveled across forgotten paths. By day, they slept beneath the earth. They wore no white crosses now, only black, stitched into their cloaks with the ashes of the fallen. Rumors began to spread. Merchants spoke of shadowed riders who helped the poor but punished the cruel. Bandits whispered of swords that shone only under moonlight. Some said they were demons. Others said angels. But none could prove they were real. In truth, they were both vengeance wrapped in silence. Years passed. The world moved on, forgetting the Templars, forgetting their flame. But in secret, the Black Order grew stronger. They built hidden sanctuaries, far from kings and popes. They studied the old texts the Templars had once guarded, learning secrets that men were never meant to know. Elias aged, but his eyes never dimmed. Every night, he walked alone through the forest paths, whispering prayers to a god he was no longer sure was listening. He carried with him a single relic, a silver medallion shaped like a cross, cracked down the center, half Templar, half Black Knight. A reminder of who they once were and what they had become. One night, as the fog rolled low across the valley, Elias heard footsteps behind him. From the mist emerged a figure, tall, cloaked, and silent. The man carried no torch, yet the mist seemed to bend around him, as if afraid to touch. "Who are you?" Elias asked. The figure stopped. For a long moment, there was no sound, only the slow drip of rain from the trees. Then, the stranger spoke. "I am a messenger," he said softly. "Your order is not forgotten. The world above sleeps, but below it, something stirs." Elias stared into the mist. "What stirs?" The stranger smiled faintly. "The light you buried," he whispered. "And those who want it back." The fog thickened, swallowing him whole. Elias stood alone again, the medallion heavy in his palm. He looked toward the mountains, where lightning flashed against the clouds. And in that flash, for the first time in many years, he felt the weight of destiny return. The storm had come again. And with it, the beginning of another war. The next morning came without light. A gray mist covered the valley like a shroud, and the air carried the scent of rain and smoke. Elias stood at the entrance of the hidden monastery, his cloak drawn tight against the cold. The messenger's words echoed in his mind: "The light you buried, and those who want it back." He had heard rumors for months now, whispers of surviving Templars gathering in the south, men who had betrayed their vows to save themselves. They were not like him, they had bent the neo-kings, selling their faith for safety. But something darker was stirring among them, something that carried the mark of power once thought lost. Inside the monastery, the Black Knights prepared for the unknown, swords were sharpened in silence. Oil lamps burned low, their flames steady but trembling. Each man moved with the calm of someone who had accepted death long ago. Brother Aldrich, Elias's oldest friend, approached him. "The world above forgets us," he said. "Perhaps it is better that way." Elias nodded slowly, "Perhaps. But the shadows remember. And they are restless." Aldrich looked toward the mountains. "Do you think the messenger spoke truth?" Elias turned his gaze to the valley below, a vast emptiness broken only by the distant glimmer of a single torchlight. "I think truth and lies wear the same cloak," he murmured. "And we must learn to see beneath it." That night, the Black Knights rode out for the first time in years. The wind howled through the pine trees as they descended the narrow trails. Their armor was blackened by soot, their swords wrapped in cloth to hide their shine. They carried no banners, no symbols, no name. Only silence and purpose. They rode until the valley opened before them, revealing the ruins of a once great fortress. It was there that the messenger had told them they would find the ones who sought the old light. The fortress was half swallowed by earth and ivy, its gates stood open, the wood long rotted, the iron eaten by time. Inside, firelight flickered faintly against the broken walls. Voices echoed within, harsh, desperate, human. Elias motioned for his men to dismount. They moved like shadows, their steps absorbed by the wet ground. As they neared the great hall, they saw them, a circle of men dressed in tattered white, the red cross of the Templars faded almost to nothing. One of them stood before an altar, chanting in Latin. Before him lay a chest small, ancient, eeled with wax and iron. Its surface shimmered faintly under the light, as if alive. Elias felt his heart tighten. The relic. It was said that when the temple fell, the Templars had hidden their greatest treasure, the source of their strength, their curse, their secret. If that chest truly held what the legends claimed, then the war between light and shadow had never ended. The chanting stopped. The man in white turned slowly, His eyes glowing with the reflection of the fire, he looked directly toward the darkness where Elias stood. "I knew you would come," he said. His voice was calm, too calm. "Black Knight." Elias stepped forward, the torchlight revealing his face. "You wear the cross," he said quietly, "but your faith is gone." The man smiled faintly. "And you wear no cross, yet your heart still burns for it." He reached for the chest, resting his hand upon it. "The light is not yours to bury," he whispered. "It was never yours to keep." Elias's hand tightened around his sword. "Then let it choose," he said. For a long moment, there was only silence, the kind of silence that comes before the storm. Then, without a word, the man lifted the lid. The wind howled through the broken fortress. Flames burst upward, scattering embers into the night. And every Knight Templar and Black alike saw the same thing reflected in the light, not gold, not jewels, but a single object, pulsing softly like a heartbeat, a fragment of something divine and terrible. Elias took one step forward, his breath shallow. The light filled the hall, reaching the walls, the ceiling, the sky. It was blinding, alive, consuming. And in that moment, the war between light and shadow truly began. The air inside the fortress trembled. The light that burst from the ancient chest wasn't warm or holy, it was wild, shifting, alive. Elias shielded his eyes, but even through his fingers, he could see it pulsing like a living flame, burning without heat, whispering without sound. The Templar who had opened the chest dropped to his knees. His voice shook as he whispered, "It speaks." The others around him murmured prayers, half in fear, half in devotion. Elias took a slow step forward. "What is it saying?" The man looked up, eyes wide and distant. "It remembers." The words struck through the silence like a blade. Elias glanced toward Aldrich, who was standing behind him, his sword drawn. "Close it," Elias ordered quietly. But before anyone could move, the light began to change. It spiraled upward, taking form, the faint outline of a figure cloaked in fire and shadow. A voice, ancient and deep, rolled through the hall. "Children of dust, you cannot bury what was born from light." Every torch in the fortress extinguished at once. Only the fire from the chest remained, now hovering in midair, flickering between shape and flame. Elias dropped to one knee, not in worship but in awe. "What are you?" The voice replied, softer now, almost human. "I am the flame that was given, and the flame that was taken. You once carried me under your banners. You called me holy. But you used me for war." The figure's tone grew heavy, sorrowful. "Your brothers built temples, not for faith, but for fear." The Templars trembled, some weeping, others clutching their symbols. Elias spoke again. "The world has forgotten. The order is gone." The flame dimmed. "And yet you remain," it whispered. "Bound by the darkness you created to hide me." Aldrich stepped forward, anger in his voice. "If this light brings nothing but death, then it should be destroyed." The fire flared violently, throwing him back against the wall. "No mortal can destroy what was made to judge them," the voice thundered. The room shook, dust falling from the ceiling. The figure began to fade, sinking slowly back into the chest. Before it vanished, it spoke one final sentence, quiet, almost mournful. "The fire sleeps until the oath is broken." Then silence. The flames went out. Only the faint smell of smoke lingered, curling through the ruins. Elias stood in the darkness, his hand trembling. He could still feel the light inside his chest, not the relic's glow, but something within him, burning low and deep. Aldrich rose from the ground, blood on his lip. "What now?" Elias turned toward the night beyond the gates. "Now," he said softly, "we find the ones who made the oath." As they left the fortress, the first drops of rain began to fall. And far to the east, in lands untouched by their war, an ancient sigil lit faintly beneath the earth, as if answering the call. The relic had awakened something. And the world was beginning to remember. The rain did not stop for 3 days. It fell over the mountains like a curtain, washing the blood from old stones and carrying whispers down into the valleys. Elias and his men rode in silence, their cloaks heavy, their faces pale with exhaustion. The storm had followed them since they left the fortress, as if the heavens themselves were watching. On the third night, they reached the ruins of a chapel deep within the forest. Its bell was long gone, its altar broken, yet a faint candle still burned within. A hermit lived there, a man the villagers once called the Keeper of Names. Elias dismounted, leaving his sword behind. Inside the chapel, the air was cold and damp. The old man sat before the flame, tracing symbols into the dust with trembling fingers. "I know why you've come," the hermit said without turning. "The fire has awoken again." Elias froze. "How do you know of it?" The old man smiled faintly. "Because I was there when the oath was made." Aldrich stepped forward, hand on his hilt. "What oath?" The hermit raised his head. His eyes were pale, blind, yet they seemed to see more than any man could. "The oath that bound the light to darkness," he whispered. "The day the Templars swore before the flame that they would guard it, not for God, but for power." He drew a line in the dust, then a circle around it. 7 knights placed their blood upon the altar. 7 names were written in ash. And so long as one of them lived, the relic would never die. Elias felt the weight of those words settle deep in his chest. 7, he murmured. "Then the oath still binds us." The hermit nodded. "Your line carries their curse. You are not the first Black Knight, Elias. You are the last of the 7. The candle flickered, and for a brief moment, the shadows on the walls took shape, 7 armored figures kneeling before a blinding flame. Their faces were hidden, but their voices echoed through time. "By blood and by fire, we bind the light to our command." The vision faded. The hermit was silent for a long time. Finally, he whispered, "The oath can only be broken where it was made, in the chapel of fire." Elias straightened, his eyes burning with resolve. "Where is it?" The hermit's hand trembled as he pointed north. "Beyond the sea of glass. Beyond the lands where no prayer has ever been heard." The rain struck harder against the roof. Thunder rolled across the forest. Aldrich looked uneasy. "That place is death." Elias turned toward him, calm but unyielding. "Then we go to meet it." The hermit's voice rose once more. "Beware the 6th name, Elias." He walks still, not as man, but as shadow. Elias paused at the doorway. "Who is he?" The old man smiled faintly, his voice now almost a whisper. "The one who never swore to protect the light, but to own it." Lightning flashed, flooding the ruined chapel with white fire. When it faded, the hermit was gone. Only the candle remained, burning brighter than before. Elias stepped into the storm, his men waiting in silence. He looked toward the northern mountains, where the clouds turned black as ash. The journey to the chapel of fire had begun. And somewhere in the dark, one of the 7 still watched. The road to the north was nothing but ruin. The land grew quieter with every mile, no birds, no villages, not even wind, only the soft rhythm of hooves on wet earth, and the occasional crack of distant thunder. Elias and his knights moved through the wasteland like ghosts, their armor had dulled from rain, their cloaks torn, their faces hidden beneath the hoods of black wool. They spoke little, there was nothing left to say. By the 4th day, they reached the edge of the sea of glass, a vast frozen lake stretching beyond the horizon, smooth as a mirror, the sky above reflected perfectly in its surface, so that walking upon it felt like walking between 2 worlds. Aldrich stopped at the shore. "This is madness," he whispered. "There's no path. No life." Elias knelt beside the ice, pressing his gloved hand against it. For a moment, he thought he saw movement beneath, shapes shifting far below, like memories trapped under glass. "The oath was made beyond this," he said softly. "We crossed that night. They built no fire, the stars shone faintly, cold and distant. When dawn came, they began their march across the frozen sea. The ice moaned beneath them, deep, mournful, endless. Each step echoed like a heartbeat, and then, somewhere behind, one of the horses cried out and fell. The ice had cracked. The knights rushed to pull the man free, but from the hole came a rush of dark water and a sound not of wind, not of waves. A voice, ancient and hollow, go back, it whispered. The silence watches. Elias turned sharply, his breath misting in the cold. Who said that? No one answered. The water stilled, the crack sealed, and the ice became silent once more. Why the time night fell again, they saw it, a black structure rising from the mist ahead, built into the frozen cliffs, and no torches burned. No banners flew, only the faint glimmer of light beneath its gates, like dying embers. The chapel of fire, Aldrich breathed. They approached cautiously, the sound of their steps swallowed by the cold, but before they could reach the gates, the ground shook, and from the darkness came figures, dozens of them, clad in broken armor, faces pale as bone, eyes empty. Their swords were rusted, their shields cracked, yet they moved with a purpose beyond death. The Oathkeepers, Elias whispered. The undead. Knights surrounded them in silence. No battle cry, no warning, only the soft hiss of steel being drawn. Elias raised his blade. If you were bound by the same fire, then you know what we seek. No response, only the cold wind, and then, as if commanded by something unseen, they attacked. The clash of metal rang across the frozen lake, sparks flew, blades shattered, men screamed. Elias fought with precision, every strike deliberate, every movement calm. But for every knight that fell, another rose from the ice. Elias. Aldrich shouted. They can't die. Elias's breath came heavy, his sword dripping with black frost. Then we endure. They formed a circle, back to back, their cloaks torn and frozen. Hours passed, or minutes, they couldn't tell. At last, the sound of battle faded, the undead halted mid-step, and bowed. From within the chapel gates, a single figure emerged, tall, cloaked, his armor shimmering faintly like molten glass beneath the frost. Elias lowered his blade. He didn't need to see the man's face to know. The sixth name, he whispered. The figure's voice was calm, almost kind. You've come far, brother. Elias took a slow step forward. Why do you still serve the oath? The man smiled faintly beneath his hood. I don't serve it, he said. I command it. The gates opened behind him, and a wave of heat rolled out, not from fire, but from the light that had once lived within the relic. It pulsed like a heart, steady and alive. Come, the man said softly. Let me show you what the silence has kept. Elias hesitated, his men weary and broken, but he knew there was no turning back now. He stepped through the gates, and the world outside vanished into stillness. The gates closed behind them with a sound like thunder swallowed by stone. Inside, the air was heavy, warm, dry, still. The walls shimmered faintly, carved with runes that glowed and faded like breathing bears. Elias stood in awe. The chapel of fire was not ruined as the legends claimed. It lived, its heart still beat with light. The figure who had greeted them, the sixth of the seven, walked slowly toward the great altar at the center of the hall. His footsteps left faint trails of smoke. Elias followed, his men silent, their eyes darting across the glowing walls. You seek to end the oath, the man said, his voice echoing softly. You think by breaking it, you will find peace. Elias's tone was calm, measured. The oath was built on lies. The light was never ours to command. The man stopped. He turned, and for the first time, lowered his hood. His face was unaged, pale, unmarked by time, but his eyes burned faintly red, like coals under ash. I was there when the flame first spoke, he said. And I learned what none of you dared to hear. He touched the altar. It pulsed faintly beneath his hand, a heartbeat of light. The flame was never holy. It was a gate, a bridge between worlds. You called it divine because you feared it. Aldrich stepped forward. Then why keep it alive? The man's gaze darkened, because beyond that light is something greater. Something that remembers every sin the world ever buried. Elias's voice dropped to a whisper. You mean, the silence? The man smiled faintly. Yes. The silence is not death. It is truth, stripped of mercy. He motioned toward the altar. Look. The light expanded, revealing visions, not of fire, but of memory. The fall of Jerusalem, Templars burning at the stake, kings kneeling in shadowed rooms, whispering bargains with unseen voices. The images shifted, showing 7 knights kneeling before the flame. Elias recognized one, his ancestor, and beside him stood the man now before him, the 6th knight. The oath echoed again, like distant thunder. By blood and by fire, we bind the light to our command. The vision shattered. Elias staggered back, Gasping, the sixth knight approached him slowly. You carry their burden, Elias. You fight to bury what they began. But the fire knows its makers, and it calls them home. Elias raised his sword. I will not let it consume the world again. The sixth knight's smile faded. Then you will have to kill me, brother. The air trembled, the altar flared, spilling fire across the floor, not burning, but rising like mist. It surrounded them, humming with power. Elias stepped forward, his sword glowing faintly as the flame touched its edge. If this oath began in blood, he said softly, then it ends the same way. Their blades met, light against shadow. The impact echoed through the chapel like a bell. Each strike sent waves of fire up the walls, each breath drawn heavy and slow. Aldrich tried to move forward, but the flame held him back, forcing him to watch. It wasn't just a battle, it was judgment. Elias's strength began to fade. The sixth knight fought with unnatural calm, his movements precise, ancient, but then, for a brief second, Elias saw his opening, the flicker of doubt in the man's eyes. He drove his blade forward, piercing the knight's chest. The sound was not of steel through flesh, but of something deeper breaking a seal, a bond. The knight fell to his knees. You've freed me, he whispered. But you've awakened what I held back. Elias leaned closer. What do you mean? The man's eyes dimmed, his voice fading to a breath. The silence is no longer sleeping. The flame around them roared, twisting upward into a vortex of light. The walls of the chapel cracked, stone melting into air. A deep hum filled the hall, not of anger, but of something vast and awakening. Aldrich pulled Elias back, shouting over the noise, Elias. The chapel's collapsing. Elias turned once more toward the fallen knight, but his body was gone. Only the armor remained, hollow, glowing faintly from within. The chapel shuddered one final time, and the world went white. When Elias opened his eyes, he was lying on the frozen lake. The chapel was gone, only ash fell from the sky like snow, and far in the distance, through the mist, a new light burned on the horizon, cold, steady, and waiting. When Elias awoke, the world was silent. The storm had passed, the wind had died, and even the sound of his own breath seemed distant. The ice beneath him glowed faintly, veins of light pulsing like roots beneath glass. He sat up slowly. His armor was cracked, his sword broken. Aldrich lay a few feet away, motionless but alive. The other knights were gone. Only the emptiness of the frozen sea stretched in every direction. Elias rose to his feet, every movement heavy, every step echoing softly against the endless stillness. He looked to the horizon, and saw it again, that same cold light. Not the warmth of fire, but something pure, white, and endless. He knew where it led, and he knew he could not turn back. He lifted Aldrich onto his horse, whispering, "We finish what we began." The light guided them north, across broken valleys and forgotten roads, through forests where no sound lived, and past ruins half swallowed by the snow. Days passed like dreams. Nights came and went without stars. Time itself seemed to bend. Finally, they reached it, the source of the light. It stood at the edge of the world, a vast circular plain of stone, ancient and perfect, surrounded by monolithic pillars reaching into the clouds. At its center, a single flame hovered, silent, white, and eternal. Aldrich's voice trembled. What is this place? Elias stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the flame. This, he said quietly, is where the first light fell. He could feel it, the same energy that had once burned in the relic, now pure and unbound. It pulsed gently, not with anger, but with memory. As he approached, voices began to rise, soft at first, then clearer. Not one voice, but many. The 7 knights, their words echoed in the air, forming from light itself. By blood we swore. By fire we fell. By silence, we were judged. Elias fell to one knee. The flame responded, glowing brighter, spinning faster. Images burst within it, the creation of the order, the wars, the betrayals, the centuries of hiding and fear. And finally, the truth. The flame had never belonged to the Templars, nor to the Church, nor even to God. It was older, a gift from something beyond, meant to bring balance, not power. But man had turned it into a weapon. A voice emerged from within the light, calm, patient, infinite. Elias of the Black Order. You have carried the burden of those who defied the flame. You have walked through shadow, seeking peace where there was none. Elias bowed his head. I came to end the oath. To break what my ancestors began. The voice grew softer, the oath cannot be broken. It can only be understood. The flame dimmed, and Elias found himself surrounded by the 7 knights, their spirits, translucent, glowing faintly. The 6th knight, the one he had slain, stood among them once more, no longer shadow, but light. He spoke gently, "You cannot destroy the flame, Elias. You can only choose how it burns." Elias looked up, tears of exhaustion tracing his face. "Then I choose silence. I choose rest." The 7th knight stepped forward, a woman's voice this time, kind and sorrowful. "Then give it to the earth. Let it sleep once more, far from the hands of men." Elias nodded. He reached out, his palm hovering above the white flame. It pulsed once, then slowly descended into his hand. Warm, weightless, alive, the moment it touched him, he felt everything. Every battle fought in its name, every life lost, every prayer unanswered. It was not a curse, it was remembrance. He turned toward Aldrich, his voice barely a whisper. "When I am gone, bury me where no one will find the fire." Aldrich shook his head, eyes wet. "You can't." But before he could finish, the light began to rise from Elias's body, flowing into the air, spiraling upward like smoke at dawn. His armor turned to ash, his sword to dust, and as he faded, his last words hung softly in the still air, "Let the light forget our names." The flame vanished into the clouds, the pillars crumbled, the valley filled with silence once more. Aldrich fell to his knees, the wind returning at last, and from that moment on, no one ever spoke the name Black Knight again. But sometimes, on quiet nights when the sky burns pale, travelers still swear they see a faint glow in the north, a white fire, flickering where no fire should be. The last light, waiting. Centuries passed. Empires rose and fell. Kings built their castles upon the bones of old wars. And the memory of the Black Knights faded into myth. But the earth remembers what man forgets. Beneath the northern mountains, where no sunlight ever reaches, the flame that Elias had surrendered still pulsed faintly. Not alive, but not dead either, waiting. Aldrich kept his word. He built no monument, no grave. He buried Elias in silence, deep beneath the frozen ground. And left the white flame sealed within a stone chamber carved by his own hand. Then he vanished, never to be seen again. Over time, snow buried the valley, forests grew where the frozen sea once lay. And the world moved on, but one night, long after even Aldrich's story had been forgotten, a whisper rose from the ground, soft, ancient, familiar. The light remembers. Far away, in a monastery built upon the ruins of the old chapel, a young scholar was copying a scroll when his candle flickered. The air around him grew colder. He turned the page, and saw words written in ink that was not his own, letters forming slowly, as though guided by unseen hands. "The oath sleeps beneath the ice. When silence breaks, the flame will rise." He dropped his pen, trembling. No one believed the legends anymore. The Templars were long gone. Their secrets scattered, their names erased. But that night, the wind carried strange sounds, not howls, not storms, the faint ring of distant steel. And deep below the monastery, the chamber of Elias stirred. The white flame glowed once, faintly. And a shape began to form within it, a figure armored in black, kneeling in the dark. A voice, calm, steady, timeless, spoke from within the light. "The world is waking. And so must I." The figure opened his eyes, they burned with pale fire. The relic, the oath, the silence, all of it pulsed within him once more. He was no longer bound by blood or by order, was something older now. A guardian of balance, a watcher between light and dark. Outside, the stars fell like sparks across the horizon. The world had entered a new age. An age of kings who built empires on forgotten truths. And of men who sought the same light their ancestors had feared. The Black Knight rose from the dust of eternity, his shadow stretching long beneath the frozen earth. He spoke softly into the void, his words carrying through stone and snow. "I will not let the fire be claimed again." Above, the monastery bells began to ring on their own. Monks rushed into the courtyard, staring at the sky, where a single streak of white light cut through the clouds. Burning brighter than dawn, the eternal watch had begun. For every age that forgets the cost of power, for every man who dares to reach for the flame again. The Black Night will rise silent, unseen. A shadow of the oath that once bound the world, and when the silence breaks once more, his voice will return to the ND, whispering the same warning it did 1,000 years ago. Do not wake the fire.